International currency markets. Trillions of dollars, yen, Deutschmarks, and other world currencies changing hands each day. Currency values floating up or down on the currents of supply and demand. Could nations and businesses that base their economic plans on exchange rates live with the fluctuations of market-driven exchange rates? And if they couldn't, was there any way the market could be managed? In the early 80s, the US dollar floated high against the Japanese yen and German Deutschmark, buoyed by the Reagan-era combination of tight money and a high budget deficit. That was good news for Japan and Germany because the high dollar meant a low yen and Deutschmark and low prices for Japanese and German exports, more sales, and more jobs. But the high dollar was bad news for the U.S. Higher export prices, declining sales, lost jobs, and calls for government protection. As Ronald Reagan's Treasury Secretary, James Baker believed that free markets made their best choices without government interference. But as a practical politician, he knew what would happen if the government failed to act.
The United States was facing a real prairie fire of protectionism. There was a lot of protectionist sentiment in the Congress. Legislation was being discussed, if not introduced, and it was our view that something had to be done about that.
To head off the threatened protectionism, Baker picked New York's Plaza Hotel as the site for secret monetary diplomacy. A 1985 gathering of finance ministers and central bankers from the G5, the big industrial nations. Their surprise decision, the Plaza Accord, an agreement to sell dollars on worldwide currency markets in an effort to send the dollar and American export prices down. Why would Germany and Japan be willing to give up the advantages of the low Deutschmark and yen? Finance Minister Gerhard Stoltenberg represented Germany at the Plaza.
Maybe a short-term advantages could be endangered when the other important countries, in this case especially United States, would be negatively affected, especially by a expanding trade deficit which created tensions also for the other countries. So we wanted a surplus in trade, but not as big as we had when the dollar was more than 3 Deutschmark.
Toyo Giyoten was Japan's Vice Minister of Finance at the Plaza.
Strong dollar made Japanese exports very easy, and very large Japanese surplus generated international criticism against Japan. Japan was concerned about those criticisms.
The Plaza Accord put the G5 back into the international exchange rate equation. Had they abandoned the policy of market-driven exchange rates?
Well, it was essentially a policy change, even though at the time we probably disclaimed the idea that it was a big policy change.
The dollar had been dropping, and now it dropped faster, down a record 4.29% the day after the Plaza, down almost 55% a year later against the yen. Had the new strategy worked? MIT professor Paul Krugman.
All the evidence before and since has suggested that intervention on the scale that actually took place should not have made very much difference. The usual experience has been that an intervention of the size, a few $1 billion that took place after the Plaza Accord, is something, if the market doesn't agree, the market thinks the dollar should be going up and you intervene to try to force it down, the market can swallow $20 billion of intervention with just a slight burp and then continue on its progress. So the intervention itself probably isn't the explanation. There's a second view, which some people call the slap-in-the-face theory, which was that the market was going crazy and the Plaza Accord, all these dignified finance ministers got together and said, the dollar is too high, it really should be going down, and the market sort of went, thanks, I needed that, and the dollar started to fall instead.
The dollar kept falling, and the finance ministers and central bankers were satisfied. But for businesses who had based corporate strategies on the high dollar, the dollar's drop made their plans obsolete. 17 months after the Plaza Accord, at the Louvre in Paris, Secretary Baker persuaded America's allies to try to keep the dollar from falling any further. Why would the U.S. want to intervene again in the exchange rate market?
Those people who believe in free markets and in laissez-faire, as indeed I do as an economic philosophy, want to see stable exchange rates. And this exercise was an exercise in trying to improve the stability of exchange rates.
But the dollar, far from stabilizing, kept falling. Had the manager's attempt at intervention failed? Had the Plaza strategy reached a dead end? Secretary Baker said no.
You see, I did not see and do not see the Plaza as strictly an intervention exercise or a currency exercise. What I see it as and saw it as was the beginning of a process of policy coordination among the major economies in the world, major industrial democracies.
The Plaza and Louvre meetings did trigger a series of economic summits and policy coordination conferences. But how much coordination was actually taking place?
Countries were very willing to send their finance ministers, their secretaries of the Treasury, to nice places, to have ceremonial meetings, and promised that all sorts of good things would happen. But none of the major countries was willing, it turns out, to change any basic policies as part of a consultative process. Over time, these meetings have become meetings at which the countries declare that they would like to have good things happen and that they believe that the policies they're already following are the right way to make those good things happen.
Heads of state and finance ministers still met. But their efforts at market management seemed to work only when they leaned with the wind. When they tried to lean against the wind to turn the market around, the wind won.